Hello and welcome back to another video. We are doing something very special today over here at this corner. If you watched the last video, you'll know that I made a Prismarine farm, and I spent way too much time on that. But we're actually going to start setting up a shop now for where to sell it. And I've already designed it all in creative, as I kind of do nowadays. And it is quite a big build, so it's kind of good that I did it in creative because it would have taken me literally forever to do the same thing here on the server in survival. So I already kind of know how it's going to look, and it's going to be pretty darn awesome. I've got even a full interior planned, which is a bit unusual for me because I've been getting a bit lazy recently and just skipping the interiors, but the actual whole interior is done, the whole exterior is done, the whole thing is done. I've just got to bring it on here onto the server, and it's going to be awesome. But I figured I'd kind of bring you guys through the process that I would normally go through, or that I did go through, I should say, with actual building of this thing and designing it, because, well, I kind of skipped over that whole part, so I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. So I guess the first idea is, why did I choose this location? I've been building, and maybe getting up in the air is a good idea here, but me, and Shazane, which was this building over here, and then also Renee, who's built we're this like black building over here. He built that one and also the one that I'm standing on. But we've been working on this like much more modern downtown area with these big buildings like this. I mean, this one isn't. This one's a bit of an exception to the street. But we've been building these. I don't know what you call them. I just call them like downtown buildings, but there's probably like a proper term for the like tall and narrow look of them. But we've been working on this little street. These two over here are mine. And we've actually got Count coming in next to me. He's been planning this one for a while, so I'm excited to see how that eventually turns out. He took like the plot over here all the way up to this road, so there wasn't much room over on the right of me to build anything new. So I was trying to think, and I could have built over here to try to like keep in my area, but just over on the other side. But this area spoke to me because it's got a big corner. And corners are kind of cool because you get to build a corner shop. And so I thought the Prismarine shop itself would be perfect on the corner right here. And I just took up everything from the corner over to the building, but I kind of knew ahead of time that this is going to be too much space for one building individually, right? So whatever I'm going to build here, it's probably going to be multiple. And it sort of is multiple in how I eventually came up with it, but it's also kind of together, and that might take just waiting until the end of the video when I actually show you the finished thing to explain that part. But okay, so we've split up into two different ones. Hopefully the rain isn't too bad for you guys. Someone said they actually like the rain, so I'm just going to keep on going. And you guys can let me know if you do like the rain. But over here at the corner, I kind of decided that I wanted it to be like a square shape, in like width and length. So you could figure out what the like length is this way by just going from the front to the back, and then you figure out how long the building is going to be this way by measuring it the same distance. And I forget exactly where it ended up, but it's somewhere sort of like right here where it ended. And so, you know, if we take this just for explanation purposes right now and say that was the middle, I'm not sure if it was, or the end of that shop, then we've also got to decide what's coming over here. But when I was designing it, you don't focus on both things at once. You sort of start to try to just, you know, take it one bit at a time. So working over here, this is going to be the Prismarine shop part. And I knew that like Prismarine, for some reason, feels very elegant of a block, especially like the sea lanterns. Let me see if I can grab some of those I have in my blocks prepared here. I know I have some of them. Oh, it was in this one. I just didn't see it. Okay. Something about like the sea lanterns in particular make me feel like a very like elegant, like high class type of block. So I wanted something elegant and high class to be the like shop that it was gonna be in. And so I was trying to think of colors because I always go to colors for how I start with like the idea of a build almost. Like almost I think of the color first before the shape, and that's just kind of how I think about it. So I'm thinking like high class, elegant, right? And I don't know, if you're building a Prismarine shop, the like first idea would be, of course, to build it totally out of Prismarine. It's very self-explanatory then. And while it does use some Prismarine, because it's going to use some sea lanterns, and it's going to use some of the dark Prismarine in there, it's not the main block that I chose. I chose more white colored blocks. And these are the ones in particular that I actually chose to work with in the end. But there's like plenty of white colored blocks out there. And so I was kind of just doing trial and error of testing different ones to see which ones I kind of liked best. And I found that the more yellowish colors over here, it's going to be maybe a bit hard because of the rain, but the yellowish colors were better for what I was kind of feeling. And it was all just kind of a vibe based. And you don't really even notice that some of these blocks are more yellow, like these ones over here, until you start placing them next to other white colored blocks. But like, obviously sandstone, very yellow. This one's not even a white colored block. It's kind of like the end of the gradient that's just very, very yellow. But then you've got the bone block over here that's mostly white, but it's pretty darn yellowed, just like aged bone. I don't know, it's kind of disgusting if you think about it, but it's a nice block for building if you're wanting to build in that yellowish white color. And then quartz even also has a bit of yellow in it. You can see it kind of meshes with the bone next to it. But obviously doesn't really mesh with these ones over here. I mean, it does because they're both like white blocks, but they're different shades of white, right? Because over here, we've got, I don't know, it looks more like pinky with the new wood blocks that we have. And I wanted to add some of the wood into my build because, the new wood, I should say, into my build, because I just thought it'd be cool and fun, and it kind of worked out. It wasn't like the main building blocks of the build, but it's like a nice accent onto it. And even though it's leaning away from the yellow part, it still ends up fitting and it adds some extra color into there. So that's kind of the gradient that I'm going with for the main build over here. And for the actual like design of it itself, I wanted something that was again like high class and like fancy looking. And so I was kind of imagining that the like interior of the shop would be like looking like a jewelry store. Because that's the most high class building I can think of. But the outside, I was imagining, and I think it's called like a Parisian style building, but it's like in France in particular. There's like very elegant, older style buildings that are like in these big streets, kind of like we have here. But it's a very specific style, and I sort of am going with that, even just generically. I don't know. I just kind of vibing it off in that, not like super specifically that, but anyways, I think that's kind of the right vibe for what I wanted to go for here. So I can't do much else in explaining how I came up with the idea besides just that until I actually show you how it looks. But while I was working on that, I was also generally thinking about what to do over here. And this is where sort of the really interesting part of the build came together, because I wanted these buildings to be meant to go together, even though they're very separate buildings, right? There's a separate thing here and there's a separate thing here. And I actually ended up separating into sort of 3 separate things. And I haven't really done this before. Like, I've built buildings next to each other, but to actually have them meant to go together, like these two, they're not meant to go together. They just happen to fit next to each other well, if that makes sense. Whereas me building this whole street end in one go, I can actually make them meant to go together. And so what I was looking to for inspiration was if you've, actually, let me go to sleep. So if you've ever built any Legos, or seen Legos, I should say, there's a certain line of Legos that are called these like modular buildings. They're like little downtown sections of street. And they're usually square shaped because of the base plate they're on. Sometimes they're a bit more elongated if you get some of the bigger ones. There was a museum recently that was a bit longer. But the idea is that like it's usually never just one building, right? It's never just one downtown street building. It's usually like at least 2 of them connected together, sometimes more. But the thing that's special about those sets that you can make is that even though they're separate buildings, they are meant to go together. They're one set. I mean, I think there was one set in particular of those modular buildings where you could actually separate them, but like most of them, they're meant to sit next to each other, right? They were designed to work together even though they're separate. And so I was really looking to those for inspiration of how do you take these separate buildings but make them cohesively one. And so there was one set in particular that was kind of cool because it had 3 buildings total, But the middle building, it was very skinny. It didn't have a bottom floor. It just had like a tunnel straight through it. And so that's what I ended up deciding to do, was kind of take a portion over here and just have like a pathway straight through it, so that you could like drive a car through it or really whatever through it. But it was like a little alleyway straight through the center of the buildings. And I thought it was so cool in the set. And so I wanted to do the same thing with mine. And so we've got a building that's going to be over here. We've got another building that's over here, missing a whole bottom floor, but it is sort of a separate building, but also much closer tied to this type of building over here. And then we've got the main like Prismarine shop over here. So usually like when you're in a downtown street, right? All the bottom floors are usually shops. So if we don't have like a bottom floor over here, we don't need to worry about like a shop here, but there's going to be a shop over here. So I was trying to think of what to sell for there. And well, for my Prismarine, my dark Prismarine, I needed black dye. And so I recently made a Wither Rose farm, which I'll just show some B-roll right now while I'm talking about it. I figured it wasn't very exciting enough to actually put into the video of me building it, because I was just copying a design from online. But I figure I can actually sell the Wither Roses themselves over here, because even though I'm using the black dye for the Prismarine, I can also just sell them individually. So I'm kind of thinking that's what's going to be over here being sold. But then what do you do with all the top floors, right? I think in normal downtown areas, you might have like residential, right, up above. A lot of times it'll be like commercial down below, residential up above, which is pretty cool. But sometimes you'll get special cases where a shop will take up even more space up above. And I've seen this before with like restaurants, where it'll be like, oh, there's a restaurant that's got this balcony view up on the top. And so I wanted to sort of do that. And so I ended up taking the space above all the shops, essentially, and turned it into one large restaurant space, which isn't actually going to be anything that anyone on the server can, like, pay for or anything. It's just decoration, right? It's not like I'm going to be selling any more food up there, but I don't know. How it came together is really cool, so you'll just have to wait for that part. But okay, so I've decided that there's going to be a shop over here, or a building over here and a building over here. That's going to be totally separate from the very fancy, elegant Prismarine build over here, right? So what are the colors? What's the style? So I know the style has to be different, and I know the colors kind of have to be different, right? To make sure that it feels different from the corner. If it was all the same, then it would just feel like one big build and not a few separate ones, and it needs to feel a bit separate. So over here, I've got some little color palettes spread out. And if you've watched my single player, you'll know exactly where these have come from, because I built some townhouses in that world, and I made them these exact same colors before. This pink color and this green color, and they work very well next to each other. Now, in my single player, I'd use these as accents to give it like a bit more texture and stuff. I ended up not needing the accent blocks, so I put them over here just to like remind you of how I had done in the past. But I almost didn't like that I did it. It felt almost out of place, so I kind of removed the accent blocks in total, and I just kept them by themselves. But there's lots of windows, there's lots of other blocks accenting it, that the base colors themselves didn't really need any more texturing to it. At least I feel like it didn't. You guys can let me know once it's finished and done. But I thought the green and the pink, which, by the way, this block, it's kind of interesting, right? When it doesn't have the cherry planks next to it, it looks a lot less pink. But you put this over here, and now it feels a lot more pink. It's kind of an interesting block. Anyways. So now this is maybe the even more interesting part of the coloring decisions that I made. When I was trying to figure out how to combine these two, right? So it's going to have separate colors, it's going to have separate design, but how do I also make it feel like it's cohesive? And so I kind of was thinking, all these kind of downtown builds, they all have these like layer lines. It's almost like a cake, right? And our builds here on this street kind of have different level lines. Like there's a layer line here and here. My builds kind of next to each other kind of had similar like layer lines, but like Shazane's, his is a bit higher, but that one kind of lines up over there. But then like Renee's over here doesn't quite line up. And so they feel kind of separate. Maybe these feel a bit closer together because they line up a bit better, but even still, these don't exactly line up. So I wanted something that very, very much so lined up over here. And I wanted the layer lines practically the same, because if they were exactly the same, it would feel a bit cohesive. Even though the styles and colors are different, the layer lines were keeping it all together as one. So the layer lines that I was like using was this wood over here. And so I used this wood as also accents for these two colored buildings. And I'm trying to figure out how to describe it better than that, but that might be good enough of a description to get the idea across. And then I also used extra bits of this wood as other bits of accent on these buildings, because once I put the layer lines in, I was like, oh, the white goes really well with these. And so I started adding like window accents and a bit of other things, and it turned out really nice to where I didn't need the other blocks texturing this, because the decoration of the white planks was like good enough. Okay, but I think that's kind of it for as much as I can explain without actually just getting to the build itself. I'll have to move some things like this sign for Eggtown. It's a bit in the way of my new build, so I'm going to clear some things out here. I'm just going to build the whole thing because, like I said, I've already designed it all in Creative, and I've got the schematic of it ready to just place down all the blocks. I've got all the blocks here ready themselves to actually build this thing, and so all I have to do is just get at it. But before we actually get at it, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer because there's something I have to do. Now, I kind of missed talking about this in my last video, but someone had commented on 2 videos ago now about my truck that I made. And they gave me some comments for what I could do to maybe improve it. And so the comment was suggesting to add trapdoors on top of the blast furnaces, which originally I hadn't. I kind of thought it looked better originally, but I figured I would show you guys what it would look like, and you guys could let me know if you think it looks better. I mean, I guess it might look better. I don't know. I imagine, like, in my head, like, the engine was, like, much more sticking out, right? Whereas when you put the extra blocks up there, it, like, feels much more hidden away now, right? It's less of, like, a big, bulky engine that's almost too big for the truck itself. Now it feels more appropriately sized. I don't know. And maybe that's totally fine. I would love to hear what your guys' opinions are, though, because this doesn't look bad with the trapdoors on, but it also doesn't look bad with the trapdoors off. So which one do you guys prefer? And also, another addition that's happened since I last showed you, there's a little guy in there now that's just like driving it. I'm pretty sure it was Val who put him in there. It was not me, but I kind of like him. He's just a nice little worker, making sure the truck's in all tidy order. I mean, it's not going anywhere, so he's not really driving. It's sort of like when a kid like jumps in the steering wheel and tries to pretend like he's driving the car, but you know, you're not driving because you're a kid and you can't reach the... anyways. And well, if anyone has any more suggestions for the truck, please leave them as a comment down below. I know people love to talk about my single-player truck, and maybe this truck will stay the same, but I think it started out so much better. There might be a lot less that people can talk about, but I also don't doubt that people will figure out ways to bring up this truck still. But with that, I'm going to get to building, and I will see you guys in just a second. So, I finished the build. It actually didn't take quite as long as I thought it was going to, but I think it turned out pretty darn good. I'm so happy with how this one looks. It might be one of the best builds that I've ever made, to be honest. Maybe not my best one, but one of the best. I feel like at least here on the server, I've been getting better and better. The first one over here was a very much so an experiment and a weird taste. Didn't turn out great. I really like the pumpkin pie shop. That one turned out fantastic. And this one might be even better. But I don't know. The pumpkin pie one's also really good. So kind of hard to decide. But let's go up into free cam so I can get a better view for you all so you can see all the fun little details. And I'm going to just walk you all through it because, like I said, there's not just an exterior, there's also a whole interior throughout all the different little rooms. So, first off, we've got over here the Prismarine shop itself, which has got some lettering that says Prismarine. It's a bit hard when it's on the curve, right? But I feel like it turned out pretty darn good for being on a curve. And then over here, we've got the Wither Rose shop, and then the two sort of separate buildings. Like I said, this one was going to not have a bottom floor, which it doesn't. So it's got a little bit of road that comes in through over here. So it's kind of like an alleyway. And I made sure to keep it pretty dark in here. I put one piece of little lichen to make sure it was still spawn proof under here when it becomes nighttime. But it's not enough where it like detracts from the spookiness. In fact, I even probably need to get rid of these torches back here, particularly this one because it's probably lighting it up too much. But I don't know, let's take a look also maybe at the back. Because if we look over from this side, I left this part of the Prismarine shop pretty plain because I didn't know if someone would build something over here. Maybe no one ever will and it'll stay just plain forever, but I didn't want to build something that would then be covered up. But I figured this part over here wasn't going to get covered up. And so I left little windows out, given a nice little design, kind of like the front has. And then I also have a little staircase going up, a little like maybe fire escape, you could say. But also the fire escape doesn't go all the way up, so it's like I don't know, it's just a little way to get up here. But there is another way to get up there. Also, I'll show you in just a second. Going to the front again, just because I'm thinking of something that I didn't want to forget telling you guys. But I put these little trap doors under here on the awnings out front. And I thought it was such a good idea because it gives like a little bit of like a gold lining to it, which is like very fancy and, well, upper class, which is the whole point of this build. So it was just like, I don't know, a really cool thing that I added. We've got that same like gold lining around some of these other parts. And then also I've got it up here, but this part I'm really unhappy with how it turned out because you had to go in a block to get like the yellow, and so that means when you're down here, you can like not even see it. Like I wish you could see the yellow from down here. Like you can see little bits of it, but it's like so not much, and I don't know. That's one part of the build that I'm really unhappy with, but otherwise pretty cool. And then for this part over here, I think it turned out pretty darn good for coloring because, like I said, I wasn't going to texture any of these greens or the pinks because I kind of decided like the other white texturing that was done, the white details, I should say, wasn't really texturing, the details of the white, kind of do enough of a job of keeping it like interesting that I didn't need to add texturing in the blocks behind it. So, and I think it turned out pretty good because it also gives it a very like modern, polished feel when there isn't a bunch of texturing on like the green and the pink blocks. So I think that's kind of cool. And maybe my most genius thing that I did with this on the exterior was when I was designing this part first, before I even touched this, I got up to this layer and was like, well, I do want another layer on top, but am I just going to copy essentially this layer down here and then put it up there? Because I didn't really know what else to do. And that's sort of what I did on this side, right? Just copied the windows up. But I actually had the genius idea of pulling it back slightly on this like slight angle. So it's actually angled backwards and it goes all the way up front to the actual corner still. But it gives this nice shape and it breaks it up a bit. And it also gives this awesome balcony that then I continued when I added these buildings in. But okay, so I've shown you enough of the outside, I think, to get the general idea of it. Let's actually go inside to see what the shops look like. So this is the Prismarine shop. And like I said, I kind of wanted it to feel like a jewelry store, which I haven't seen a jewelry store have like balconies up above, but maybe I just don't go to fancy enough ones. But then we've got all the barrels here with all the different stuff. I don't have quite enough dark Prismarine yet because I haven't AFK'd enough. My farm's a little annoying. You have to wait for the previous blocks to build up before it builds the next ones, since these are like at the end of the line, and so it just takes forever. But we've got a bit of everything around here. And hopefully people will be buying it. I know people will probably be buying most of this, so I'm a little frustrated I don't have enough of it right now, but that's fine. And then I think I did a really good job with the lighting in here because I snuck in a bunch of end rods on these little plants over here, and also got a little lamp and stuff. And so I was able to sneak it in without too annoying of stuff. And I also added a chandelier, which also looks nice, but by itself, it didn't light things up enough. Um, and then just for fun, we can come up here to the actual like balcony. You can go all the way around, but it's pretty plain up here because I don't know, people aren't really meant to go up here. So kind of the most disappointing part of the interior, honestly, is up here on the balcony, because there's such other good spots over here, over at this other building. So through the front over here, you can get to the Wither Rose shop, which is just a small little interior, just enough to have a couple barrels and a little decoration, a little viewing outside so people can see it when they're out here. People can see that it's a Wither Rose shop, so that's kind of cool. But then there's all the floors above. And so what I did was I created a whole interior that wasn't going to be for a shop. I'm not selling anything up there. I've actually made it into a restaurant. And you can come into the restaurant either over here or you can go up the like fire escape type thing over there. They both get up to like the same place. But this is kind of meant to be like the more main entrance. And you would come over here because it's a very upper class fancy place, right? We've got all these coat hangers over here, and so they'd like take your jacket, put it up for you. Maybe you got someone, I don't know, there should be a chair over here, and they kind of sit down when they're waiting for someone to come in, and they come and grab your coat and, I don't know, play on their phone while they're waiting or something like that. But then you come up here, and if you're a customer, you just go straight up. But I figured a restaurant would need somewhere to have the kitchen, and so I kind of squeezed it in over here. It's not the best kitchen. It's really cramped. It's got a little sink and just a couple counters and storage and stuff. And then over here is where like I put a grill outside, so you know, maybe they grill outside stuff. And then the food smells go all the way down the street, so people are smelling and going, I should go to that restaurant. I don't know. It kind of made sense, but it also kind of didn't make sense. But it was good use of the space. But let's now go up the stairs over here, and you'll be greeted by the little like lectern where, you know, someone would take your how many people in your party and then go find you a seat somewhere. And so if we head down this way, there's a couple like tables scattered around, but this is like the main dining hall, which I love how this looks. You just like, it goes from this tight little corridor and then it just opens up into this beautiful room. Nice big paintings on the wall, a little chandelier. It's like nice and white, but it's, I don't know, it's just like such a nice vibe in here. And it's also so bright because it's got all these end rods around, which I think is actually good for this type of interior. Sometimes you want like the darkness like down below in that little alleyway, but like in here you want things to be super bright because like that's what a fancy place would be, right? Just super bright lights and everything looks elegant and amazing. So I don't know, I just love this room. And then maybe the more rich people get to come up here where they're like on top, you know? I feel like rich people would want to be at the highest place possible. I don't know why I attribute rich people to cat-like instincts, but I figure like they'd be like a cat trying to go up all the way to the top. But yeah, we got a little seating up here for maybe the rich people, and then maybe even the better seats than up there because they're still stuck inside is this balcony area out here, which I just love. And of course, it also goes into this side of the building. It just takes up the whole balcony here, and I don't know. I love the view from up here. I keep on making taller and taller builds. I realized this after I made it, but like my first build on the server was 2 stories, then my next one is 3 stories, and then this one is now 4 stories. And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep on building apparently bigger and bigger buildings until like it's just practically a skyscraper at some point, right? But yeah, I think that's kind of it for the interior and the exterior, and there's probably details that I'm even missing to point out to you guys just because there's so much that I put into this, and I don't know, it's just, it looks so beautiful. I hope you guys have enjoyed this immensely as much as I have. And of course, if you guys have any suggestions here for the build, please leave, a comment down below. But also, I almost forgot to tell you guys, Rotten Block now has a Reddit page where I actually posted a sneak peek, a little early preview of this build. And so obviously you guys couldn't have seen that because I hadn't told you yet. But in the future, if you want to catch sneak peeks or other things maybe I'll be posting or other people will be posting, you should totally go join the subreddit. And of course, you can post your own stuff on there if you've got memes or builds of your own that are somehow Rotten Block related because they are meant to be Rotten Block related stuff on there. But also, if you just have like questions or whatever, besides leaving something down in my comments or someone else's comments, it might be a nice place to get the community together to do stuff. And I don't know. I think it's going to be pretty cool once we get enough people on there so that we get a fun little community going. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.